going to talk about some special angle relationships. First, we need to kind of review some things that you have learned before. Complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. The angles don't have to be adjacent for this to happen. Adjacent means they are right next to each other. So in this picture, if these two angles, AFS right here, and DFS, this angle right here, add up to a right angle. We know that because of this box here. That means that those two angles are complementary. Supplementary angles add up to 180 degrees, and the angles again do not need to be adjacent, so they could be completely separate from each other as long as they still add up to 180 degrees. There is one kind of special supplementary angle. When they are adjacent, we actually call that a linear pair, because when they're next to each other, they form a straight line. But they have to be adjacent to be considered a linear pair. Okay, vertical angles are two opposite angles formed by intersecting lines. And they are going to be congruent. Remember, we said congruent means that they're the same size, same shape, but it doesn't necessarily have to have a measure attached to it. So in our picture here, these blue circle marked angles are vertical angles. They have congruent measure. They're equal. If we were to have a number, they would be equal. And these red angles are also congruent. When we have two parallel lines that are cut by a transversal, this line in the middle would be the transversal. These are our parallel lines. There are a number of special angle relationships. So when we have angles that are inside parallel lines and on opposite sides of a transversal, they are congruent. These are called our alternate interior angles. Alternate relates to them being on opposite sides. And the interior part of that name refers to them being inside the parallel lines. So that's where alternate interior comes from. And over here in the picture, we can see that all four of these purple and green angles are inside the parallel lines, and the ones that are congruent are on opposite sides. This green angle is on the left. This green angle is on the right. Purple angle is over here on the left. The one that it's congruent to is on the right. Those are our alternate interior angles. Similarly, we have alternate exterior angles. These are outside parallel lines, and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. And they are also congruent. They're also congruent. So over here we can see the pink and the pink angles are congruent. They're outside of these parallel lines. This is where our interior angles would be. So these are our exterior. And then they are on opposite sides of the transversal. That is what we mean when we say exterior. They're on the outside of the parallel lines. Consecutive interior angles are interior, so they're inside the parallel lines, but now they're consecutive, not alternate, so they are on the same sides of the transversal. They're on the same side. These are actually going to be supplementary, which, remember, from the top of our notes means they add up to 180 degrees. These orange angles are on the same side of the transversal, and they are inside the parallel line. So if I were to add up these two orange angles, their measures, it would equal 180 degrees. If I were to do the same with these cyan angles, the measures of these cyan angles, they would also be 180 degrees. Consecutive exterior angles are again the same idea, but they're outside of the parallel lines. And now, because they're consecutive, they're still on the same sides of the transversal. And just like the consecutive interior, these are supplementary. So now the red and the red are supplementary. Purple and purple are supplementary. We can clearly see that this red angle and this purple angle would also be supplementary because they're a linear pair. They create this straight line, so they are a linear pair. And if we move back, we know that this red angle and this purple angle would be congruent because they're alternate exterior angles. Okay, our last type of special angle relationship is going to be our corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are in the same position, and they're going to be congruent. Now, when we say the same position, oops, I left out N. The same position, they're congruent. When we say the same position, we mean relative to the parallel line. So here I have this little cluster of angles at this intersection point. Down here at the other parallel line, we have the same cluster of angles. So the gray circle is the top left angle. It's congruent to the top left angle of this cluster. The green square is the top right angle of this cluster, and it's congruent to the top right angle in the bottom cluster. Those are going to be corresponding angles. If we were to cut this out and move it over and lay it on top of this cluster, all of those angles would be congruent. They would match up. Okay, now the really, really important thing to note is that these all only, except for the vertical angles, these are all only applicable when we have parallel lines cut by a transversal. So if I have two lines that are not parallel, these will not work. Vertical angle does not need to have parallel lines because it's just the intersection point, but we can see it in the parallels as well. This purple angle has a vertical angle right here. They would be congruent. But all the rest of these do need parallel lines. I'm going to say in relation to the intersection of parallel lines and the transversal. Okay, that way we can make sure we know this one also needs those parallel lines. Okay, so that is all you're going to use today is those special angle relationships. For my freshmen, you probably didn't learn this in 8th grade because you were taking Algebra 1, but my sophomores and my juniors and everybody in my other geometry classes, this is kind of a review from 8th grade math that you learned a few years ago, but we're refreshing it today. Second thing is I told you I was going to put our field axioms on the second page of the notes just so you have them for later on. These are the axioms that we used when we did our algebra proofs. I want you to have them in your notes. We're not going to add anything to them today. I just needed you to have them. Okay, that is all we're going to cover today. Don't forget to click on your exit ticket. It's linked right here on the purple cloud. You'll click on it and you'll open your exit ticket. Send me a text if you need any help on Remind. Have a great day.